Welcome to the Fedora Podcast, a proud member of the Destination Linux Network. This is Season 2, Episode 6. That's right, this is Episode 6. We are more than halfway done with Season 2. For those of you who don't know, we've decided that each season of the Fedora Podcast is going to be 10 episodes long, following how long Season 1 was. Since we are on episode 6 now, that means we have this one, then 4 more to go. We hope you'll listen to all of them and enjoy them. Today, we bring you an interview with the i3 SIG, talking about the i3 spin, a new Fedora spin introduced in Fedora 34. We talk about what it is, how you can use it, and how anyone can create a Fedora spin. This is the Fedora Podcast, a proud member of the Destination Linux Network. With me today, I have Dan, Cermak, and Odilon. I'm sorry, guys, I can't pronounce your names right. But how are you doing?
I'm great.
I'm doing great. And how about you guys?
And of course, we've also got my co-host, Edward. Hi, Edward.
Hi, Grayson. How are you?
Very good. So, today we're here to talk about the new i3 spin and the special interest group, or SIG, that created it, which is you guys. To start out, could you just quickly explain what a window manager is?
Well, I can take that one because that's the first thing I did in all the presentations. Basically, a window manager is the software that draw the window in your desktop manager. So every desktop manager or every desktop environment have a Windows manager because it's the software that is in charge of drawing the window. Then the desktop take charge of the inside of the window, what is going to show, the theme, or inside that window. But the window manager is the software that takes charge of drawing the window in the screen.
When you guys talk about this, you usually call it a tiling window manager. What does that mean?
Well, it actually means kind of what the name says, that a tiling window manager puts your windows in tiles next to each other. So little bit of history, I think, way back. Window managers, so I think we're talking something like maybe the 80s, maybe even earlier. I think the 80s. The first window managers that came around were first tiling, and after that, people found out that, well, it's actually kind of nice if you can put windows in front of each other, and that's called a stacking window manager, which is kind of what you get to see on your ordinary, let's say ordinary in air quotes, what you get to see on KDE, GNOME, or macOS Windows, essentially everywhere. And so a tiling window manager is just something that is essentially just a window manager that puts where you don't put windows in front of each other, but you just have them next to each other, and you essentially only have a single layer.
Mm-hmm. So you could have them in quarters or halves or however you wanted, really, but it tiles them.
Yeah. In i3 you can have them in tabs also. i3 also has kind of something like it also has something like a stacking mode, but it's not like what you'd expect when you run KDE or something like that, or GNOME.
Yeah.
So
you basically have a floating mode that you can switch around your window, but it's not like in other DEs that you have a more freedom to choose.
When you say DE, what's the difference between a DE or desktop environment and a window manager like i3?
In this case, desktop environment are a complete suite of software. It's not only the window manager. The window manager is a specific part of that software. So when we create what we're going to talk later, that the i3 spin or when you use a window manager or a standalone window manager, that's how I call it, is because there is nothing over the window manager managing anything. The window manager is the only thing that is working with the windows, and everything is the software. There is nothing like connecting these dots. You have to make this connection by yourself, kind of. But the window manager is just one part of a desktop environment, and the desktop environment is a complete set of software. It's not only the window
with
manager.
with multimedia offs and other things that you would expect from a full desktop experience.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
maybe as a illustration, if you run KDE, you are running a window manager as well, Kwin. If you are running GNOME, you're running a window manager, Mutter. At least I think at some point you were running Mutter. And so I mean I've also seen on, I think, a long time ago when I was running Arch Linux, there was a kind of a hacky mod of GNOME where you would essentially throw out Mutter and replace it with i3. And so you'd get essentially a desktop environment where you have all the shiny pieces of GNOME, which means Polkit authentication, login management, screensaver, etc., etc. But you get i3 as the window manager, so you don't have to. You didn't have to configure it all yourself. I mean, it was Arc, so it broke on me a week later, but that's a different story.
Before we go on, could you just quickly explain what exactly is i3 as a window manager? There's lots of different window managers. What makes i3 special?
In the history of graphic user interfaces, there have been a lot of reiteration over things that were badly designed or bad documented or was hard to work on. So i3 was like written from scratch, learning from the mistakes done in another Windows manager that was called WMII. I don't know how they pronounce that. So they just wanted the developers wanted a better version of that and better documented, easy to work on. And also the thing that is appealing to me, that was the thing that put me into i3, is that the configuration is not done in language. It's doing in a configuration file. So that is really appealing to me. If you look to others window managers, you need to know at least the basic syntax of the language or the programming language that is written to be able to configure it, even if Haskell, Python, Rust, or C. You need to know that language. For i3, you just need to follow a kind of syntax, but it's easier to configure. You just need to follow the examples and you will be set on.
Yeah. And the documentation is great. As you said,
yeah.
The wiki have a bunch of examples.
And what initially brought me to i3 is so I think when I considered switching to a tiling window manager, I took a look at a few of them, since there's a ton. There's really a ton. There's a few that are really popular. There's a few ones that aren't so popular. But there's you have a lot of choices. But at least to my knowledge, i3 is the only one that's really tiling, where you can resize windows manually with your mouse. I had a friend in university, and she was a huge Awesome fan. But what always
Awesome is a window manager, to be clear.
Yeah,
it's another window manager.
Oh yeah, sorry. So yeah, that's another window manager. And what really was my gripe with that one, that it would put your windows in predefined positions, and you couldn't resize them, which always annoyed me. I mean, if I'll be completely honest, nowadays I just have all my windows in full screen, so it wouldn't make a difference. But that was at least very back then quite important for me, that you could actually arrange stuff the way you like it. And given how scriptable i3 is, you can essentially script all this stuff to your liking, so that every time you reboot your machine, it starts out exactly like you want it or like you left it off. So if that's your thing, you can go crazy there.
Actually, the other part that was super appealing to me is that I was able to configure the desktop environment in the same way that I have my Tmux session in terms of panes. In Tmux, they're called panes. Of course, in Windows Manager, it's a window, but you can configure it in the same way to be displayed. So I get used to because I'm in the terminal almost all the time.
You mentioned that you configure it in a config file. Most desktop environments that people interact with, they'll configure their desktop environment and their window manager through a graphical environment. How much harder is it to do it through a config file? Does that kind of make i3 more of a not like advanced or power user, but not certainly not beginner friendly?
That's correct. So
Yeah.
it's certainly not as simple to get started as with KDE or with GNOME. That's definitely true. But two things about that. So yeah, if you open up i3 and you have not read the documentation, you're screwed. So
Until you understand what is a mod key, Shift and E to leave i3, you are screwed for as the guy said in the beginning. You will have minutes trying to understand why you cannot open Firefox, why something is not opening, where is the launcher.
Well,
But
I'm
the
going to be
nice thing
super
about
honest.
this plain text config file is it's pretty clear, it's obvious where it comes from, and it doesn't break. I essentially went through all the big desktop environments. I used to use GNOME 2, then I had Mate, I had Cinnamon, I had KDE, and every single one of them eventually broke during an upgrade. And it's totally not obvious which part of the config is stored where, because it's in some weird database, and you upgrade your system and then something breaks and stuff stops working. And I've been running this same i3 config with here and there a few tweaks for, I don't know, half a decade, maybe even longer, and it still works. I've used it across multiple different distros, it still works. So that's one of the big appeals. Yes, it's harder to configure initially on. It's definitely not what you'd expect user-friendly, but we're working on a welcome app that will at least tell you how you can exit it, which that's like the most, like the most Googled question on Stack Overflow. How do I get out of VI?
Yep. A welcome app does sound really cool. I wish that more desktop environments would adopt that.
Yeah, we stole that one from GNOME.
For GNOME.
Well,
the GNOME app is actually impressive, not only because it's an app, but because it changed your welcome to the documentation. I think it is. Actually, I'm too old to understand how it works now. I remember in the past there was like .csm files, but are help files. We call it help files. If you finish the genome tour, there is always a link to the documentation, and it was super easy to navigate. So that's one of the things that inspired the i3 welcome app that is being worked by the team, specifically or more specific from Dan. But because, well, like you say, i3 is kind of intended for power users, but we want all people to be able to use it for several things. But one of my motivation is that I have super old machines that doesn't run modern desktops, and I don't like LXQT, I don't like LXDE, I don't like rat poison. GNOME and KDE are kind of heavy. I know they aren't heavy because any decent machine now should work, but I have machines that are old, that are not decent from the current market. So I need to run something that doesn't take any RAM and any memory, and i3 fits quite good. And the other thing that is super appealing to me is that you can save your config files in any CBS system
Yeah.
version. I use the one that is hosted in Fedora. I use Pagure to host my config files, and but you can use GitHub, GitLab, Mercury, or I don't know, whatever you wanted to use, because it's just a plain text file. So it works super nice that you can just pull the configuration from the internet.
Yeah, you just need to set the dependencies that you use, the fonts, the theme that you want. You can put that in the Git repo as well. So that is what I do. I got mine in one GitLab private because I have some things that should not be on Git, but it is to avoid drift. And it's today, I think if I refresh my laptop or my desktop, it would take 2 minutes to clone the repo, run the bash script, and voila, here is my i3 the same way that was in the previous PC. So it's amazing that you can do this with
You know,
your experience.
given the big red hat in your background, you are actually contractually obliged to use Ansible for the deployment. So, just saying.
I'm an old Puppet user that can start a
Oh.
war here. But yeah, I'm trying to migrate to Ansible using the Swiss knife that Justin have created, and that Edward, I think he also uses, right? The
I think
Swiss
so.
knife repo. Yeah. So
Also,
there's
it was
Go
interesting.
ahead.
Justin is not here, but he was the original user I found that used i3. He showed i3 to me. So I want to thank Justin. Even when he's not here, I was hoping he could be here because he was one of my inspiration of using the i3 desktop window manager here in Fedora, and that makes my life tons easier, but like so much easier because I configure all my machines with one script. I just pull my Pagure repo and run one script, and all my machine is just set in the same way. I have the 3 machines that I use on my own, and I use just 2 commands, and it's running in the same configuration. That's super nice.
Yeah, I think at this point we could also, I mean, since you mentioned Justin, we could also call out Nazir, who was one of the guys who really made the i3 spin a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Nasir
put in
was the-
so much work and made this thing actually fly. Without him, it wouldn't have been a thing.
Without his work on the kickstart, we could not land the spin in time.
Yeah, to be a little more clear for the users, a Kickstarter file is a file when you define how the ISO is going to be built, what things are going to be inside, outside, what is going to be the initial configuration, the tools you are going to need to have your installation media on. So every spin, how it's called in Fedora, or flavor of different uh, lab or anything that you are going to build on top of Fedora is going to be through a Kickstarter file. And thanks to Nasir that he put so much effort with this, he was able to create the base Kickstarter file that was the final i3 spin. It was finished by Odilon here, but the base work was.
The heavy lifting was all from Nasir. I just did the formatting in the end and some bits that was missing, but he did all the work initially. So shout out to Nasir.
Yeah.
You guys have talked about how you set it up with a config file and how you can back that up and how you configure it and that kind of thing. Before the i3 spin was put together, how did you have to do that in Fedora? Did you have to take down Workstation and remove GNOME or whatever?
I used to pull down server and just install i3.
There were
Yeah,
several ways.
I use it minimal, but sometimes when I was in a hurry, I use it workstation and never remove it GNOME. Just switch it to i3, and because I use GNOME terminal for this date because I'm old. It's what I've been using for a long time, and Nautilus as well. It's my file manager that I use. So having GNOME there, it's okay for me, but you can use minimal server. The one that comes with least packages was usually the one that the guys would use.
Well, like I say, i3 was intended to be like for power users or for advanced users. So normally you have like 2 or 3 ways to install a machine without environment, and from there you just have to install i3. Right now, part of the work that Justin did and we all the SIG did was to create what is called package groups that allows you to install all the things you're going to need to have the i3 desktop it's not desktop environment. It's called desktop environment because it was the standard naming that was because was the i3 when the i3 spin is the first Windows manager that is going to be like in a package group specific, so it's called i3 desktop environment, but it's actually just the i3 Windows manager with the applications we set to be in these package groups. So it's super easy that you only have to do DNF group install i3 desktop environment, i3 dash desktop dash environment, and you're going to have what we ship in the i3 spin.
You said it's cheap in the i3 spin. I guess you guys kind of created the i3 spin to make your lives easier, the whole scratch your own itch open source mentality? Or were there any other objectives in making it?
From my point of view, I was when I joined the SIG, the guys was already working, and I wanted to help with the experience of installing i3 because now we have like DM to help on the Xorg part. We have a terminal that we ship. We have the i3 as well. So the notification, everything that we had to do manually, now we have a ISO that you can install and or just test in a VM or in a desktop, and it will work. That was my goal in the beginning, and I know that some of the guys also had this in mind, like simplify the user experience.
Actually, in the beginning, I used to use the cinnamon spin. I like cinnamon. Don't ask me why. I just like it. And when I moved to i3, I was like, oh, this is super fun for me, like a power user. Um, I was interested in having it without the overhead of package that the cinnamon spin have, because there was a lot of things that I didn't use. So I started this like asking people, just I'm using the i3. How do you use it? What do you install? What do you remove? What do you think if we started? And basically, near the creation of the SIG, I contacted our Fedora program manager, Ben Cotton, with the idea of creating something with i3 as base, and he put me in contact with 2 Red Hatters, and they have pulled a document where they put the things they think will be like a base for a desktop based on the i3 Windows Manager. Using that document as a base, I create the Pagure group for the i3 SIG, and the people say, I want to join. At the end, we're like four or five guys, and finally it was Nasir, Justin, Dan, and me. And at the end, Odilon came in to join in the meetings, and we put together what we wanted as base. Actually, I take feedback from a lot of sources, from Reddit, from YouTube. I look for blog posts where people are talking about the spin or about i3 in specific. And the most feedback I have is that it's great because it's a vanilla i3. It doesn't have any overhead like other i3 versions or in different distros. They put a conky with the hour to be floating over the screen, or they use a specific theme. And while we are trying to theme some stuff to be more Fedora-ish, the idea is to keep it super basic. We have 4 design goals that with the link will be in the description of this episode, where we have 4 things that drive us in the spin or in the group. That is, simple is better than complex. We don't want to have super complex stuff. If you want to have something more complex, you have to do it yourself. The spin is going to provide the basic, like how to work on document, how to connect to the internet, maybe how to connect your Bluetooth device or something. But trying to make it as simple as it can be. The second one is the fast is better than features. That we want something that is fast. Even when we are trying to provide all the features that Fedora have, like BTRFS, PyWire, and all this super advanced stuff, a new feature is going to make i3 slow. We're not putting it in. Okay, so because the whole thing is that make our system faster, and if you want to have the new feature, you are going to put it by yourself. Also, the thing, a thing that happen a lot with desktop environments is that I'm going to put the most basic example, and is choosing a terminal emulator. You are going to have a holy war of internet if you ask for a terminal
We are
emulator.
having one
We are having it right now.
right now in your SIG. We're
Kind
having
of.
one.
Yeah, we're having one kind of. We use URXVT as in the spin, but I think every one of us have a specific. Odilon say he use Genome Terminal. I know Dan uses T. I use Kitty. But the thing is that we want to ship only one. If you need another one or you want one that is not shipped, you have to put it yourself. We are going to provide one that provide the functionality. If that doesn't work for you, you can remove it and pure the one you use. And the idea is that now it's better. That is kind of aligned with the modularity stuff that you put the module you want, you know.
Yeah, and I mean,
And
if you're a programmer, then it's kind of like the Python idea. I mean, if you've ever coded in Python, then Python really lives by this idea that the base language gives you, for most things, one way how to do it and not 50 million ways how to do it. For example, like Perl does, which means that if you take a look at Python, it's kind of clear what the code does. And if you take a look at Perl, it just looks like line noise.
yeah, actually, our design goals are based on Python. Yeah, the Python Zen. And the last one is that now is better than never because people say that i3 is kind of old, and well, we are here now using it. So
The most questions that we have when we talk about the i3 spin is, when is the sway spin happening?
Well,
'Cause-
ask the sway sick.
Go
No, I
to the
mean-
sway sig. I'm joking.
like I say, I was one of the goals I have personally, not in the SIG, but personally, is to have all machines working. So the i3 spin provide me a base that I don't have to configure from scratch. It gives me one step over the over scratch. So that's why we are using X. Probably we're going to move to X Wayland at some point when it's mature enough and when there is a fallback to when it's a proper X11 replacement, we're going to move to X Wayland. But Yeah, there is a SUI SIG that works with SUI. SUI is a window manager from Wayland that is based clone. I don't know how exactly the term is, but it's basically i3 for Wayland.
They do support the config file, but the same way that i3 does. It's compatible. It's just the alternative with
Okay.
Wayland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the alternative for Wayland, and there is a SUI SIG that works in Fedora that do a very, very, very good job supporting the SUI package in Fedora. And if they are interested in creating a spin, we are going to be as supportive as we can. But our objective is to work in i3.
Are there really any differences between Fedora i3 Spin and Fedora Workstation other than the desktop environment or lack thereof and window manager?
Well, there is several differences because, like I say before, desktop environment is not just Genome. Genome include a whole set of software. We came with a proper packaging, proper set of package we want to set. Even I think we don't even share the desktop manager. That is the thing that where you put your name and your password to log in. We use LightDM. That is the one that is shipped in other spins. So it's not like removing Genome. It's just have the Fedora base, and over there build a spin, like the same way Workstation built the Genome desktop environment over the Fedora base. The Fedora base is going to be the kernel packaged by Fedora with the Fedora customizations, the build
Branding.
system, the branding, the being util. So I don't know how it's called. It was called Build Essential in Debian, but I'm kind of lost how it's called in Fedora. But basically, the utilities that communicate with the kernel specifically.
It's kernel headers, I believe, in Fedora.
Well, glibc and binutils.
Being utils, that one. Yeah, that's development stuff. That's the low level. Over that low level, we put the i3 to keep Fedora for the users, for the end users.
We still have support for Flatpaks and BTRFS as Go ships on Fedora 34, as well on Workstation. So we have a bunch of similarities. Fedora is the base. We just make it look different with the i3 as a window manager.
Yeah. But I mean, currently at the moment, I mean, even other spins, Fedora is kind of a relatively, I'd say, a relatively uniform distribution. So even if you, independently of where you start, you can take server and you can convert that essentially to KDE. You can take KDE, convert that to GNOME. You can, and so currently the spin is essentially just a selection of packages that are it's just a pre-selection of packages that provide you with a good starting user experience as a Fedora i3 user. And if you are not running currently the i3 spin, then you can, but yeah, just running Fedora, you can essentially get the same thing by installing the correct packages, and you'll get more or less the i3 spin for you. Yeah, I mean that's how all Fedora editions and spins work, more or less. I mean, actually, you can even take your Fedora server, Fedora KDE, whatever, and convert that to something like Fedora Silverblue. But I think it only works one way. You can't go from a RPM OS tree system to a non-RPM OS tree system. So yeah, the whole thing is pretty flexible, pretty modular.
We've gone through your design goals, why you created this for its simplicity and that type of thing. What are your future plans for this? Or are there any improvements on the roadmap you're looking forward to?
Oh, the list is long.
As per with all projects, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean we got a few immediate goals. So I think for Fedora 35 we want to first incorporate all the feedback that we got. So we got quite a few people chiming in and giving suggestions what we could improve, what we could change. So currently we're kind of working on improving the initial user experience, because many people were, for instance, confused by, hey, I open up i3 and I start the spin and I just get greeted by an empty screen. And there's
How can I start the live installer? Like,
exactly.
This is most asked question for new users. How I start the live installer?
Yeah. So that's one thing where we want to work on this welcome app. Then the Fedora design lead, she's created a pretty cool color scheme for i3 and for for i3 status itself. And so we want to create branding sub packages that you can install or use the upstream one, so that you get more Fedora color schemes. So that should be included. Then we have this ongoing discussion for which terminal emulator we use, where we gotta pick one, since we all kind of agree that we all don't like the current choice, but we can't agree on which one we should choose. So, but given our design goal that we want one way, we'll just, most of us will just have to bite the apple and say, okay, we're going to take it back. And yeah, I think that's, I'm not sure if we got any immediate plans for Fedora 35. And I mean, there's a whole ton of stuff. So at least on my further back roadmap is I still have some automated tests set up for OpenQA for Fedora's Fedora's. That's an integration testing framework that Fedora also uses, and I've written some tests for the i3 spin, but never managed to get them really smoothed out. So that's something that I'd like to eventually tackle, and then maybe, some crazier stuff, maybe an RPM OS3 based Fedora edition, or actually this Sway spin, since given all the work that we've done, it shouldn't be that hard. But still, it's a ton of work, and currently the spin still needs more attention.
Yeah, I was trying to run i3 on Silverblue, and I run into some issues with the composition of the screen, and I got back to the live spin that we have, but it's on the track of the SIG. I don't remember who is looking at Silverblue right now, but we have some folks looking at Silverblue with i3, and it's on the future part of the SIG. Right now, we really want to smooth out the user experience for Fedora 35.
Dan, you mentioned that that's an area that needs more attention. How could people get involved in the Fedora i3 spin and contribute to it?
That's actually pretty easy. So you can just hop on Matrix, you can hop on IRC, you can hop on Telegram. If you take a look at the i3 spin page, there should be links to all the different places where you can reach us. So we have as I said, we have a Telegram group, we have a IRC room that's also available on Matrix. Yeah, so there you can just hop into the chat room and introduce yourself, ask around, and if you want to contribute, I'll go probably on a tangent here, but if so many people who think about contributing to some project like i3 or like Fedora, they think, oh well, I have to be a programmer or something like that. No, you don't. You really don't have to be a programmer. So don't get deterred by that. We need people in all kinds of different roles, and I'd say at the moment, we don't really need programmers. We need people who give this a try. We need people who take a look at it from different angles. We need people who write docs, and I'd even say, yeah, people who just talk about it, make some noise, make a YouTube video, write a blog post, um, give it a try. Give it a try from your angle. So if you are new, if you're a new user, if you're a seasoned Fedora user, if you've been using i3 or have never tried i3, just give it a try and say what you think about it. Since I mean, we talked about it. It's 4 or 5 people. We created it from our point of view, and our point of view is by nature biased. So if we thought this is a great idea, well, turns out it might not be a great idea after all. And so if you want to contribute, first thing, just jump into the chat room or go to the mailing list, subscribe to the mailing list, and introduce yourself. Or just if you find something that doesn't fit, go to Pagure. We have a bug tracker on Pagure, and open an issue what you don't like.
Also, I want to say thanks to the people that have been contributing stuff or issues in Pagure. We have like 3 or 4 tickets open because people find stuff that didn't work in the spin that I wasn't aware. I think any member of the team was aware that it wasn't working, and now we have these issues open, and that's how the contribution works. You don't need to program. You just want to raise your hand and say, "Hey, this didn't work," or "It doesn't work. It doesn't work like it's expected." And that's so much helpful. People doesn't understand how helpful that is, and we want people to be able to do that.
That's awesome. We'll have links to those in the show notes. Are there any other Fedora i3 things you guys would like to talk about before we finish up?
Well, I mean, if you got a if you're a contributor or just a regular user and you want to get and you have a crazy idea, or if you think, hey, I want to create something comparable, just give it a try, jump in, ask around. We all of us have different ideas where we want to go with this, and if you want to give it a try yourself or create a spin yourself, it's actually once you go down through the details, it's not that hard. So just come and chat with us. We don't bite.
Yeah, if you have any question on Kickstart, how to proper submit, how to format the Kickstart, what files you need, we are fresh in this. We did this last release, and we know the pain points at the moment to release a spin. So if anyone wants to get involved on that, please reach out on IRC, Telegram, Matrix, mailing list. We'll be there. And as Dan said, we don't bite.
Yeah, my message at the end of the presentation for the i3 SIG always is take your idea and talk about it. I started the i3 SIG just asking people if they are using i3, and it results that is where there was a lot of people using i3. The result that is there is a lot of people that remove all the stock environment and put i3 or build it from scratch. I say, hey, we can make the life of those people easier. It wasn't my intention to create a spin. I just wanted to have an ISO. I initially have the idea of doing a remix that is like a Fedora version that you build for yourself. And then people say, hey, we can make this official. So, why not? What we have to do. And just asking, and people will guide you. And we are here to guide people.
Well, thank you guys for your time. This has been a really great interview.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for bearing with our ramblings.
If you guys ever have an amazing new update, or even just a fun new update with the Fedora i3 spin, invitation's always open to come back on the Fedora Podcast and talk about it. Thank you all for listening to that interview. I found it very interesting, especially the points about how anyone can create a Fedora spin. If you're interested in learning about the process of creating a Fedora spin, I'd encourage you, as they suggested, to reach out to them. You can find them in the show notes. And now, some quick news before we end the episode. Fedora Nest is so soon now. Their call for paper is closed, but registration is now open. Get your free tickets at the link in the show notes. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, on Tuesday, then Nest will start in 2 days, on Thursday. It will then go through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We hope to see you there. Thanks for listening. That was Season 2, Episode 6 of the Fedora Podcast. Please visit podcast.fedoraproject.org to find our chat room, send us email, and more. I'm your host, Grayson. Edward was our co-host in this episode, and Tricknology made our music. This is the Fedora Podcast, a proud member of the Destination Linux Network. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Or sooner, if we see you at Nest.